This right here is called money. It's something us scuba divers seem to be very allergic to. All jokes aside, I've been working as a dive professional here in Hawaii for over the last 5 years. All the way back in 2019 when I was fresh off my snorkel test to now in 2025 where I am a scuba diving instructor that runs my own independent dive operation. And in that time, I have worn many hats in the industry: shop staff, dive master, underwater photographer, shop instructor, and independent instructor. And today I wanted to come on the YouTube and talk to you guys about my experiences in the industry working as a dive professional here in Hawaii, what kind of wages you should expect if you're coming into the industry working in any dive shops across America, kind of tricks of the trade that I learned and experiences that I've experienced so you guys can come in with an educated background and really know before you guys even make the investment on your education whether or not this is something you guys really want to pursue. With that being said, I absolutely love my lifestyle as a dive professional. I cannot imagine myself doing anything different in a different way. Sure, I'm not making the most money, but it pays for itself in the amount of experiences and passions and friends and adventures I've gone through in the last 5 years in this industry. It's gonna be a longer, less structured video. I just got a lot of notes here and a lot of ideas and experiences I want to communicate to you guys through my 5 years here. So if I'm rambling a little bit or this video is not as polished as my other ones, I do apologize. Also, if I'm glancing at my paper or my laptop, just trying to make sure my ADD stays on track with all the notes that I've kind of put on paper before this. A lot of people, when they first get their open water, see the amount of students that they're working with, see the amount of people posting about diving online, and kind of assume that the dive industry as a whole is a big cash cow. I'm here to tell you guys that unless you're running a very, very well-structured and well-oiled diving operation, it's not really. Especially if you guys are shop staff, there is not a lot of money to go around. Partially because dive owners are not the best with retaining talent over long term. So if you have an industry where you have thousands and thousands of instructors and dive masters being certified every year, and say you have an instructor who's been working for a dive shop for a couple of years and says, hey, I want a raise, they're gonna look at that instructor and say, we can either give you a raise or we have 20 other instructors that are willing to work for the amount we're paying you right now. So dive operators will take the cheaper labor 9 out of 10 times, unfortunately it is, and you will either have to work for cheaper or not work at all and change your profession. So just know that when you guys are coming in, unless you guys are instructor level or higher or kind of figure out a way to make money on the side, dive masters and shop staff is not really a long-term sustainable living wage. The wages are pretty low, sometimes even close to minimum wage. So even though it's a very, very entertaining job and you get a lot of perks with it, don't expect this job to be your next one for the next 10 years, unless you guys are really looking to invest in becoming an instructor with a lot of specialties and kind of climbing up that instructor ladder. There are 5 positions in the industry I'm going to be talking about today. First one's going to be shop staff. So shop staff is anyone who works in the shop directly with retail and kind of day-to-day operations. That's not necessarily you have to be a dive professional. Some people come into working as a shop staff in hopes that their time in the shop will kind of equate to them getting cheaper rates on becoming certified and certified professionals, which some shops do honor, but a lot of shops will kind of give you like, hey, we'll do it, and then kind of postpone it until you don't no longer want to work for them. So that's also something I watch out for. But they are also responsible for filling tanks, kind of organizing gear, making sure customers who are coming in and out are satisfied with all their needs, creating bookings, organizing events and whatnot and so forth. It's just kind of the day-to-day operations of the shop. Like I mentioned, they typically make around minimum wage. Here in Hawaii, minimum wage just got raised to $14. Back when I was a shop staff, I know my shop staff starting salary was $12. Luckily, when I came in, I got hired for $15 just because I kind of was able to negotiate that in my interview, just with my sales experience I've already had in the past. But I know there was some other shop staff that got put on for $12. But now it's minimum wage is $14, so now I'm I'm assuming the shop staff is going to be put in at $14. And I know some shops that still honor that $14 no matter what in Hawaii. Another facet of shop staff that they rely on to make a lot of money is some shops will offer commissions. Say it's like a 5 or 10% commission on sales. If your shop honors that, that's great. There's a great way to make a lot of money. And also, if you have a shop that is getting a lot of students in the door, and say these are a lot of brand new open water certified divers, you can easily upsell them on gear that they potentially need now that they're super stoked on diving and want to know everything there is about the diving world. It's a great way for shop staff to make money off of commission. But you have to self-advocate, just like all things in the industry. Like I mentioned before, the dive industry isn't the most mature with its owners. So a lot of times, even if your shop does have a commission system, you got to be on it yourself. So you can say, for example, at the end of the month when you're trying to submit your commission and they're like, oh, we don't have proof of that, you have the receipts to show like, hey, this is what went on. So just make sure you self-advocate for yourself. That's going to be kind of a theme in the rest of this video. But working the shop staff is a great way to get discounts on courses and gear. I wasn't shop staff, but I was a deckhand growing up through high school when I was for a dive operation in Maui. Unfortunately, they no longer exist because they went out of business during COVID. But I got my advanced and my rescue for free, just exchanging hours for certs for over one summer. So that was really, really cool. And as a 16-year-old, that was like the best thing ever because I had no money. But that definitely was a great perk that kind of set me up for success going into my dive career. Also discounted gear. Say if you are an avid diver, not necessarily a professional, but someone who really enjoys diving, and you want that spicy 30%, 40% off of the new SCUBA Pro set or whatever, that is a great way to get it if you work for a dive shop. Like I know for a dive shop I used to work for that offered discounts. For gear, you had to work there for a minimum of 3 months before you were even eligible, and then after those 3 months, you could buy whatever you want. And if you're super lucky, the shop you'll work for has free standby charters, so say on your day off, if you really want to go diving, and the boat's got an extra seat, you can hop on for no cost if your boss is cool like that. Working in the shop before you become professional is actually a great way of seeing a professional dive life is even for you. I know many people who thought they wanted to become dive masters, thought they wanted to become instructors. They saw the lifestyle and kind of how physically taxing it was on the body, even though every day was a new adventure and I love it with all my heart. Some people just, it's not for them. And when you're spending over $1,000 on a DiveMaster course and then a couple thousand for your instructor stuff, you kind of want to know that that's what you want to do before you spend that money. So working in a dive shop even before you have your pro certs is a great way of knowing if the dive industry is actually for you. And I'd recommend that for anyone who's thinking about becoming a professional diver to work in a shop first, dip your toes in the water, and see if this lifestyle is actually for you. Now we're going to move away from the shop and towards the water with our first professional certification level, DiveMaster. I tell this to students all the time, if you genuinely love diving, even if you don't want to be in the industry as a professional, I still would recommend anyone to get their DiveMaster certification. It's a hell of a lot of fun. You get tons of dives through the course, and you become a really, really good and really safe diver. You become basically the ultimate dive buddy, essentially. And just like the course, working as a DEM is a lot of fun. You typically are taking certified divers, so you're typically taking people who have proven themselves in their course that they are not incompetent in the water, ideally, of course. So you're taking people who know how to dive and are there for the fun of it, and you guys just make sure everyone's safe, point out some cool sea turtles, and show everyone a good time. With that being said, dive mastering is actually, even though it is pretty fun, it is a lot of work. Diving for, say, 2 tanks, 4 tanks, sometimes even during high season, 6 tanks a day, takes a lot of physical toll on your body. And especially since dive masters are coming into the industry not getting paid that much, it kind of motivates you to do a lot of dives per day if available, so it is physically very taxing. I know there's certain spans during the high seasons here in Hawaii where I would do 4, sometimes 6 dives a day, and I would come home feeling hungover, feeling very tired, and just basically coming home and sleeping, waking up, diving for 8 hours, it's 12 hours in the boat, whatnot, coming home and just passing out and repeating during high season. Also, with the high amount of dives you're doing as a dive master, you are susceptible to some other water-prone stuff like ear infections and whatnot if you're not keeping track of keeping your ears clean. And also, if you are doing high-volume dives and you're not resting properly, you might get sick a lot, which in turn kind of messes with our sinuses. And if we have bad sinuses, we should not be diving. If you're not diving, you're not making money. So it's kind of like this vicious circle if you are not properly taking care of yourself while you're being a DM. Let's talk pay for dive masters. In my career, I've seen 3 different payment models for dive professionals. One is hourly, so you get a set rate that you get paid for how many hours you work. Next is going to be per tank. So per tank you dive is how much money you make, and also per charter. So that, for example, is how much you get paid for how many times the boat makes a trip, which typically here in Hawaii is about 2 tanks. Sometimes you might have a special dive case where some people might want to snorkel first and then you take a DSD on one dive, or you might have someone who just wants to do one dive and then the rest of the time want to maybe chill with the family who are all snorkelers and riders. 9 out of 10 times though, it's 2 tanks. So in my experience as a dive master, when I got first brought on, I got paid charterly and I made $75 a charter. To which, translating to the amount of time the charter took, which is about 4 hours, I made about $18.75 a charter, which, as you may know, living here in Hawaii, it is a very, very expensive endeavor. So 18 an hour is not that much. So it kind of motivated me at the beginning of my career to bring in a high volume of dives and just basically doing 4 to 6 dives a day when it was available during the high season and during the slow season, cutting a lot of costs since I was only doing 1 or 2 charters a day. Actually, for my first couple years of diving, every single fall I would get a sinus infection on the dot in September. Our busy season was extending from June all the way to August when school gets back into session and families aren't traveling that much. And as soon as that happened, my body started being able to finally rest, I would get sick every time. So yes, staying healthy is very important. Getting your sleep, drinking your water, being properly nutritioned, very, very important when you're doing a high volume of dives, especially for money. Because if you get a sinus infection or a nose infection, you're out of the water and you are not getting paid. Throughout those years, I was a dive master. I got 2 raises. One was to $90, and before I did my IDC, I got a raise to $105. My first one was just from the time I put in. The bosses thought that I deserved a raise for the good work I was doing and how valuable I was to the team. And the second one was because of how valuable I was as an underwater photographer with all my own gear. And I'll get to that later. $90 is around a charter is about what you should kind of expect if you're a consistent dive master out here getting paid per charter in Hawaii. I did help out some independent instructors here and there, and they would pay me $125 a charter, which was very, very nice as a DM, but I never counted on it, and it only was really during high season when people needed help with ratios that I would get those opportunities. So as a dive master, I was making about $1,700 for the slow seasons and making over $3,000 a month during the high seasons. So as you can imagine, living in Hawaii, I do a lot of cost cutting. I live with roommates. I shop at Costco and get gas at Costco. Drove an old car. So whatever was able to give me the lifestyle that I was able to afford, I got essentially. For the most part, responsibilities as a dive master are guiding certs, monitoring safety under the water and above, whether it's on the boat or the beach or the shop, getting customers geared up, transporting customers, helping with briefs, helping with instructor ratios, cleaning up gear, and kind of getting everything all organized in the shop if need be. Depending on the season and depending on the operation you're working for, tips might also be a big impact on how much money you're making. I know personally on the boats that I was working for, we wouldn't get much from tips just because the crew on board was so large, basically on those giant Newton boats, to where even if we got like $200 worth of tips, we still split between 6 people. So I never really count on tips for my income. I just saw it like extra, like, ooh, little fun money, maybe get like some drinks later or like get to go out for a nice dinner or something like that. We make our money during the holidays and the warm months, and during those, for us, spring and fall when not a lot of people were traveling was the slow season, so we had to make sure we had to cut back a lot of the spending during that time as well. My next position I had was an underwater photographer. So I technically still had my DiveMaster cert, but I had all of my own professional camera gear that I was very competent with. So I was able to offer photo packages for the shop, on behalf of the shop or on behalf of the people I worked for, towards customers using my own gear. Pay rates as an underwater photographer is very similar to my pay rates I was getting as a DM, with a slight little buff since I had my own camera equipment. I know I've seen DMs in the past that have come into dive shops and been asked to be an underwater photographer and not had their own equipment. So the dive shop just hand them a GoPro and say, hey, if you take photos for this person for a 2-tank charter, we'll pay you $80 or something like that. When you have your own equipment, it's kind of like you say, okay, I get it. But if you have your own equipment, make sure you are leveraging the heck out of that. A lot of dive operators will see people who have their own equipment and know that they're eager to kind of get out and make content and kind of take advantage of that. So if you, for example, have a nice underwater setup, a housing, whatnot, you're very competent with your skills, the dive shop might offer you a rate of, for example, in cases I've seen in the past, like $90 to $100 a charter for your photos, and keep the photos as well as give the photos to the customers, which in turn, they're only paying $90 for promotional media, which is something you should be paying a lot more for. So if you are giving your photos to a dive shop while you're giving it also back to the customer, make sure you're leveraging that and getting paid what you should. In my experience, I've had situations where a customer, say, would book a photo package through the dive shop. The dive shop would hire me for that charter. We would go out, and when we get back, the dive shop would say, okay, send us the photos, and then we'll send them out to the customer. Where in that situation, you gotta watch out because they're only paying you, say, $80 or $90 for that charter. And if you're sending your photos to the dive shop, you're giving them essentially promotional content for next to nothing. So make sure if you are giving the photos to the dive shop as well to the customers, you are getting paid for that, especially if you're on gear, because that is very, very valuable media that you have. For example, in the past when I worked for dive shops that would give my photos to customers through them, I would make sure they at least minimum paid me $150 for 2 tanks, just so I knew I was getting compensated for their also potential marketing media as well. Whereas in the past, where I had another shop who refused to pay me that premium for the underwater photos, so I just directly sent my photos to the customers themselves and never got the dive shop involved, just so they never took advantage of my work, essentially. So please self-advocate for yourself. Do not get taken advantage of just because you have a nice camera and really, really want to use it. All right, so know your worth. Another method I found that dive shops and dive operators use to minimize your pay potential as an underwater photographer is they would make the case that since you're a photographer and you're not working as a DM or an instructor, that you don't specifically add to ratios. Where in that case, I would just take a look at how much their customers are actually paying for their underwater photo packages and underwater photos. Because if they say, okay, your rate is $90 for being a DM, but we're only going to pay you $60 for a photographer, and they're turning around and paying the customer an additional $200 or $250 for those photo packages on top of their already booked boat seats, then you can come in and make the case and be like, hey, even though I don't directly add to ratios, me taking the photos is making these 3 customers really look like 6 on your sheets. And you can kind of leverage your way into saying that even though you're not technically responsible for the safety or the well-being of guiding the tour or instructing the students, that your photos bring just as much value to the bottom line as the instructors do on the ratios. So keep that in mind. It's a little bit stuttering there, but I hope you guys get the picture. All right. After working as a DM and underwater photographer for a couple of years, I finally decided that I wanted to start bringing back a little bit more money per dive than I was as a DM or a photographer, so I decided to go get my IDC. For a lot of people, becoming an instructor isn't for them. There is a hefty price tag, even if you just want to get your open water certification done. And each specialty on top of that, or if you want to go to MSDT or staff instructor and so on and so forth, there are even heavier and heavier price tags to up your ranking or up your education as a dive professional. So you really need to know if this lifestyle is for you. I know a lot of people who get their instructor's licenses and don't teach them. They had a good time doing their IDC and it was a great experience, but it never really turned out as an investment towards a career in the future, just because they did it and they found out they weren't into teaching, or they did it and didn't move themselves into an area where they can actually teach and make money from it. So just be sure, if you're getting an instructor and you are looking for a return on investment, that you actually are willing to teach in the future. Once you get your instructor, a lot of dive operators will throw you into the fire on day one. I remember the day I did my IDC at the Utila Dive Center. Honestly, the best IDC course I could have ever had. I would 10 out of 10 recommend anyone do your IDC over there. The instructors over there were nothing short of phenomenal. My course director, Juicy, is the man. But when I got back from Honduras and I was doing my first teaching course, I got thrown into a course with 5 students and 2 of them weren't even English speaking. Just be aware, when you got your IDC and you start working, whether you're in America or somewhere else where you have a high volume of students, you're going to be thrown to the wolves 9 out of 10 times. In my case, if I was a dive operator, I would start my new instructors with doing advanced open water courses and not giving them to more experienced instructors, just because with an advanced course, you have non-beginners who are you're teaching. So when you're someone who already really knows how to dive and has a basic baseline, you can kind of get into the flow of teaching a lot easier, as opposed to, oh, you just became an instructor, here's people who have never touched water before, So if I had the ability as an instructor to kind of wean my way into it, that's how I would do it. But in most cases, we're not showing up to any dive shops for our brand new instructor job and, setting our terms, right? So something to be aware of. My pay as an instructor starting off was at $125 a charter, but after our first busy season, I quickly moved up to $135 a charter, which equals about $33 an hour. Again, not a ton of money, but definitely a big boost from the $18 an hour you might start off as a DiveMaster. And with the amount of experience as certification specialties you may acquire over your career, that number will continue to go up if you are working for the right dive operators and good shop owners. And if you work as an instructor for a while and work in a place where there are a ton of influxing students, getting your MSDT or your staff instructor or even your course director might be a viable option for you if you truly enjoy it and want to do this for the rest of your life. For me personally, I am in no rush to get my staff instructor anytime soon. My open water cert with all the specialties I'm able to teach does me just fine. I'm looking forward to taking my further education towards a captain's license first before I'm upgrading the rest of my SCUBA certifications, just so I'm able to make a living wage if I ever have to be out of the water for an extended period of time, but that is just me. Also, most of our diving traffic we get here in Hawaii are mostly certified divers who are here on vacation and discover scuba divers who are in Hawaii for only a certain amount of time, since it's a very expensive place and only can really afford to dive one day instead of keeping 3 days or 4 days for a full open water certification course. As an instructor and a dive master, depending on the shop you work for, you might either work as an employee for that shop or an independent contractor. For most of my career, I've been an independent contractor. So every single time I would pay for any furthering education, any of my own insurance, and any of my own gear, I would make sure I wrote that off my taxes. Again, when you're dealing with the US government, you have to actually make sure when you write something off your taxes, it's actually towards your career. As an employee, your taxes are a little bit less complicated. You're usually working on a salary or a hourly wage. And if you are a foreigner working in the US, you want to be an employee, so the shop can supply you with a work visa, so you are able to work here legally in the US for the certain amount of time that you allocate. And if you're a truly independent instructor, meaning you have no shop above you and you want to do your own thing, make sure you calculate all of your operating costs. Like I said, independent contractors, you got to pay for professional and liability insurances, your PADI fees every year, your education towards your certifications that you have. If you're doing shore dives, you got to make sure you have the necessary equipment for that. Say, even here in Hawaii, we have a whole bunch of different permits you need for beach access to make money off of that. And if you're taking people out on a boat, you got to make sure that you're contracting from a Coast Guard certified vessel out here. And if you have your own boat, this entire whole can of worms I have no experience about, so I'm not even going to open that can of worms. So once you set a price and set on top of all those fees, you got to make sure that you're getting adequate amounts of divers in the door, or else you're not going to make any money. Especially here in Hawaii, you need to get divers in the door because you will run out of money very soon. Also, make sure if you're ever structuring out the pricing for courses or dive tours, you always leave in a little bit extra wiggle room in your margins, because there's always going to be hidden costs. There are always hidden costs around scuba diving. I cannot stress this enough. So I'm going to end this video with a couple lifestyle and work tips so you can maximize your income as a dive professional. Cut your costs, whether it's shopping for discount groceries, living with roommates, not driving a nice car, not going out every weekend, and the one that hurts me the most, not buying a brand new surfboard every 6 months. Again, you're not getting into scuba diving for making money, it is all for the lifestyle. If you're comfortable with lowering the bar for living below your means, then scuba diving is a great lifestyle that I cannot recommend enough. And what about you guys? Are you guys seasoned dive professionals? I would love to hear about your thoughts and your experiences regarding your life in the industry. If you guys are dive professionals across the seas, I would love to see what your experiences are like compared to mine regarding wages, living, and culture. And if you guys are brand new divers and have any questions about what it's like working as a dive professional here in America, drop any questions in the comments. I would love to help you guys as much as possible. With that being said, that is the video. Please consider liking and subscribing if you found this video useful. Also, you guys are ever in the area of Oahu and want to come out for a dive certification or even just a dive tour around the shipwrecks and the reefs we have over here, my company, Lokahi Scuba, would love to help you guys out. Until next time, go enjoy the ocean, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Shoots.